So primarily we see fear as the biological response to stimulus, and that's why everybody's fears are different, because everybody has different responses to stimulus. Is it the same as worry? This is where your language doesn't necessarily serve you, because worry we see as fear replicated, meaning you have a fear that's a biological response to a stimulus. And that can be very natural. A loud sound, something like that, can cause you to be in fear. Startled, maybe, is another way of saying it. And as you experience your fear, as you experience yourself in that way, and it comes, peaks, and abates, that's sort of a normal fear pattern. When you have a fear, and it comes and it peaks, and then it levels off, and you stick with it for a long time, that's what we call either hamster wheel thinking. You can call it worry. And that's kind of why when you're in the fear-based operating system, it's so difficult, is because you don't recognize that you're staying with a fear much longer than the biological stimulus requires. And that's a really important thing to be very clear on, is fear is a biological response to stimulus, and how you decide to process your response to stimulus can really change that picture into something that's more healthy. Now, you might say, I worry about money because I constantly have bills. Okay, what we try to do is, even if you constantly have bills, each bill needs its own pattern. But what tends to happen is, like, we'll just keep using money. Bill comes, you think, I can't pay it. Fear response. Then you start in worry, I can't pay it, I can't pay it, I can't pay it. The next bill comes, and you go up a notch, even if you've paid this one. And that's why it just keeps going up and up. Many people, once they get to a certain level of fear about a subject, don't realize that they can let that fear go. So that picture, if you call this part worry, you tend to worry and then fear on top of that, and fear on top of that. Spin you up. It's hard to get out of. All anxiety is very close to worry, in the sense that you have that, we'll keep back up to our picture, fear response, and then worry comes across here. Anxiety just is that bar, but not attached to any specific biological stimulus, right? So the bill comes, you go into fear, and then you worry about that, and you stay at that level of fear, right? When you're in anxiety, you've detached your anxiety from any specific stimulus. We might say trigger. The trigger, the stimulus, is gone. So instead of having a pattern where you can say, I was in fear, okay, I paid that bill, back down to baseline, instead of I was in fear, worry, like that, like we showed before. When you're in anxiety, chronic anxiety especially, you're here and you don't know why. And this is why you have to be conscious. You have to learn to be conscious. It's because if you're constantly in anxiety with no attachment to this, there's no solution to that. The only solution is to make the choice for consciousness. That's why we have so many tools to help you guys, is because this is very common. You know, if we had worry be a line, anxiety is a bar. Again, if fear is a biological response to stimulus, all these other pictures that we're calling all these different words are way up here. And you want to get back to down here where you can do something about it. Track it back to what you can actually do something about. And that's very difficult to do if you're not in the moment. Because a lot of times all of this business here is past, future, all that anxiety, that bar. Where does that anxiety come from? All those layers of worry stacked on top of each other. So you've got worry about money when I was 5, worry about money when I was 10, worry about money when I was 15, etc., etc., etc. Becomes anxiety about money. And we've said it before, do you have a bill to pay today? No, but you're thinking about money nonstop. Therefore, it's not connected to an actual biological stimulus. It's trapped in that band of anxiety that really is habitual response. At the moment when you're having that strong response, being aware that you're having that strong response and being aware that you have a choice. And that choice can turn back and come back down to baseline where you say, whew, okay. And then you come at it from consciousness. You come at it from, I don't have to go into the habituated band of anxiety or a habituated pattern of worry in order to have a solution to this situation. In fact, the solution does not exist up there. The solution is not up there. But that's the only place you've known to look for it. And that's why we say if thinking could have solved it, it would have solved it long ago, because you sure have thought about it enough. That's where thinking happens, is in that band of anxiety. And that's what the tools and striving to be consciousness gives you, is because as you strive to be conscious, you say, in every moment, a very good tool here is what is true now. In every moment you have access to what is true now, and you can say, I'm wearing brown pants. And in that moment, you will break up that pattern that wants to rush ahead into that fear response, if you remember to use it. And that's why we've been doing this for as long as we have. It's almost like a trigger, which can be anything that causes you to feel fear, flops into this place, this band we're calling it, and then you think that's your life, right? You think the band is where you're living. But the truth is, the band is where you go when triggered, not where you live. Where you live is down here, where you're having the initial experience. So chronic fears continue to revisit that band instead of realizing that band is like a no man's land, where you can't find solutions and you only recycle the anxiety and pain. It's when you recognize, oh my God, here I am again, one more time. Is there a generating event? Is there a trigger right now? Is there that thing that started this off? Or am I just doing this because it's what I did yesterday and what I did the day before and what I was taught by my mom and what my community around me supports? Because you have a body, because you have a survival instinct, fear will always be a part of you. But that pattern that we've talked about won't be. You'll go whoop, 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 maybe whoop, whoop sometimes. But you'll catch the fact that you're afraid before it gets into this habitual place. You won't cover it up with other substances. You'll face it. And you'll recognize that even when you're afraid, you can choose to be fascinated by the experience rather than go into habit about the experience. And this is all the habit. That's another way to get out of fear, is to say, okay, I'm fascinated by this, I'm fascinated by this, I'm fascinated by this. And we know this isn't easy, but it's not easy to be in fear like that either. That's hard. So at least this one has an upside, meaning you get back down to neutral. So you put a little effort in and you change the way you experience this very, very human thing. One, when you're transitioning into or out of the sleep state, it's a huge change, right? It's a huge change. Just think, you lay down and you go unconscious. Sounds kind of like death, and your body can interpret it that way. And when you come back out of it, it can feel like, oh God, I'm in this thing again, this body again, I'm doing this lifetime again that's hard. Why did I ever come to this earth place in the first place? And you can have that re-entry, in essence, re-entry issues, where it's like, I'm doing this again. So a thing to do if you're having the morning fear pattern is to say, I'm choosing to be here. And see what resistance you have to telling yourself that. Because the truth is you are, but you have resistance to that fact. Trying to recognize that the juicy place to live is far more fascinating than this stuff ever was. And the juicy changes and evolves and becomes more, whereas this is just hamster wheel over and over and over, same thing. So how do you make that change? You make the change by deciding that consciousness empowers you, rather than deciding that fear drives you. And it's the difference between the fear-based operating system and the consciousness-based operating system. The fear-based operating system says, all I care about is what fear tells me what to do. And the consciousness-based operating system says, I'm going to make room for insight because I want my life to be more juicy. I'm going to make room for insight because I'm sick of doing this all the time. And I'm going to open to insight because I am ready to live as a human in a way that's never been possible before, which is integrated with your soul's energy. So that fear isn't your guiding force. Fear is something that happens down here. Boop, 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 boop. Oh yeah, I deal with it. You know? Oh, cars need air in the tires. Needs gas. Boop, 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 boop. Right? That's just stuff. Instead of it being, oh, what's that sound the car's making? Oh my God, the last time the car made that sound, it cost me all this money. Right? It's, oh, car's making a sound. Better go to the mechanic. And yes, you can learn to live like that. And the real power in fear is that it gets you to act. Right? Fear drives your behavior all the time. So it's an extremely powerful force, which is why we say instead of being fear-based, if you're consciousness-based, and you're allowing consciousness to take that spot that fear is taking, where it's pushing you, you can really empower yourself. Really empower yourself. And again, it's all the things we've talked about. So this is a great way to talk about it. It gives you that opportunity. Gives you that opportunity to say, I could be fearful here, and I'm going to be conscious instead. That's why we called our very first book The Choice for Consciousness, because you have to make a choice into, and then you choose and choose again to continue on the path of consciousness rather than default to familiar suffering and habitual response and hamster wheel thinking and the whole repetition of that bar that we've talked about.